Hi and welcome to this week's Wu Wei Wisdom Life Lessons teaching. It's great to be back with you all. Now, are you living in a state of anxiety that is affecting your health, happiness, and potential? Well, this is the first in a series of new teachings we're going to be doing on the Wu Wei Wisdom approach to understanding anxiety and overcoming it. And today we are covering the fundamentals, what we believe are the main causes of anxiety, how your childhood experiences and upbringing affect your anxiety in later life, and how to use the golden thread process therapy model as part of your anxiety management strategy. Okay, David, so I know you've worked with thousands of clients on anxiety issues. In your experience, what are the main causes of their anxiety?
Well, it can be many and varied, Alex. And I think what we have to do, first of all, in this series is go back to the core teaching that you are the creator of your emotions. Therefore, you cannot be the victim of them. And this is what a lot of my clients kind of have great difficulty or struggle with this, because they say to me, I intellectually understand that, David, but... And when you use that word but, you're introducing doubt into that core belief. The question, if you're watching this, and even if you get some doubt in what I'm saying, you have to really focus. Do you create your emotions? I'm not saying you shouldn't create your emotions. I'm not saying emotions are wrong. I'm not saying you should ignore your emotions. The first and the fundamental question is, are you the creator of your emotions? And there can only be a yes or no answer on that. Is whether you believe that other people put emotions into your body, emotions float around the room. What is it you actually believe?
And so, David, in this case, obviously, we're talking about the emotion of anxiety. And so are you saying that what we're thinking or what we're believing is creating our anxiety, if we own that?
I think that's another interesting point, Alex, that we should delve into. These names we give our emotion. I mean, what's the difference between anxiety and stress? What's the difference between anxiety and overwhelm? So we give these very emotive words, very powerful words. I am suffering from anxiety. And what that does, that name, that label, that definition almost increases that feeling. And that's why I would suggest you call them red light feelings. See, it's much more powerful and it puts you more in control rather than saying, I'm suffering from anxiety, to say, I am choosing to create a red light feeling. Now, you see, that's a more steady, balanced Wu Wei approach to this situation.
And David, I think that a lot of people would, when they hear you say, I am choosing to create the red light feeling of anxiety, would get a strong feeling of resistance to that, because it's almost like, oh, you're blaming me, you're saying it's my fault. Whereas I think this is more about kind of owning the things that you can control, understanding that if you create these red light emotions, you can control them. So really, this is about self-empowerment. This is not about blaming or diminishing the person, or say, oh, you're in the wrong here. This is all about self-empowering by becoming aware of what the processes that are going on behind the scenes in your thinking, in your beliefs, and how that is affecting your physical feelings, your physiology, which we can label as anxiety. So sweaty palms, headache, tense muscles, palpitations, all the physiological symptoms actually there is a huge measure of control that we can take here of this.
Alex, that's such a powerful teaching, and I hope the people will kind of look back on the video and go over what you've just said, because this is the difference. And again, if you listen to the core teaching, you are the creator of your emotions, not the victim. And so what Alex has just explained, using the different words and techniques than I would, when you go into that thing that the inner child does, oh, you're blaming me, oh, I can't help it, oh, they triggered me, you become the victim. Oh, they made me feel, they did this and I couldn't control my emotions. All of that is why I call in my model victim statements. And you're not a victim. You're a spiritual being. You have immense power. You are awesome. You are awesome. Don't make yourself a victim by slipping in these victim statement words. That's why you should go back. Either you believe that you create emotions, and again, those emotions might be appropriate, it might be the right emotion to create, or you don't. And if you don't believe you create the emotion, here's the question for you to answer. How do emotions enter and manifest in your body if you don't create them? And this is the question I ask my clients. Do they float through the air? Do other people transmit them to you? How do you think it works? And this is the two belief systems that I call the dual belief system. Intellectually, you have to accept that you create emotions. Emotions are part of being a human being. They're wonderful. They're great. They make us who we are. Or you believe that you're not in control, as you said. You're a victim. Pooh you. Other people do that for you. And this is the contradiction between what I would call the spiritual self and the inner child.
So to break down what's happening, we're living in the real world. We encounter a situation, a challenge, something that's happened immediately now, something that we anticipate may happen in the future. And so this is the real world, external environment input. Then we process what's going on through our thinking, and our thinking is affected by our core beliefs. The core beliefs, if you watch many of our teachings, and I will put a link to our Golden Thread Process playlist, which will explain the basics on the Wu Wei Wisdom therapy model. But we take in information from the outside world. So we encounter a challenge, an unfamiliar, unexpected situation. We then process that through our minds, our inner self-talk, which references our core beliefs, which come from childhood. The response then is the red light feelings or the green light feelings, so happiness, comfort, ease, calm, bliss, or in this case, we're talking about red light feeling of anxiety or stress.
Can I just say something? You've explained that perfectly well. But this is another thing that I find my clients misunderstand.
Yeah.
That process that you just explained happens in a blink of an eye. It's almost instantaneously. And this is what they don't understand. Because what we're trying to do is to kind of get a microscope on it and stretch it out to see what you're happening. But when you're experiencing, you don't go through the thought process that you've experienced in the way that you've experienced. You do go because the lens, the beliefs are already set up. You've already got your beliefs. So what you just explained is perfectly right. You've explained it step by step, but it doesn't seem like that. It seems like it's just a reaction. And then my clients, I'm sorry, I've just got to say, my clients will say things like, oh, it's ingrained. Oh, it's my nature. Oh, I can't help it. Oh, it just happens. Oh, you see, all of these victim statements.
And David, I think that for most people, yes, this process is so familiar because obviously it's a pattern of this. in everyday life, we're bombarded with different information. So we, over time, over decades, we've developed these quick systems of processing. And so that's why they kind of go on in our subconscious mind. And then we don't have the awareness. And that's why, as you say, people absolutely experience the red light emotional, physiological symptoms of anxiety, and they automatically say, well, that's because of this person, that's because of this situation. And what they're not aware of, and I guess this is what we're trying to bring into the viewers, listeners' conscious awareness, is this absolutely vital middle step, which is the internal referencing that's going on, like internal self-check and processing that's going on between our core beliefs and our thoughts, which then produce the result, which is the physiological response that we're labeling anxiety. And David, I want to just, again, so people are aware, when we say core beliefs, we're talking about, if we hold a core belief, which is, I'm not good enough, I'm not going to be able to cope, I'm not lovable, I'm not worthy, then if that's kind of in our hard drive of our thinking, and we encounter a difficult situation with a person, someone we love, a work situation, those type of core beliefs are going to come heavily into play in our internal referencing and checking and processing of what's going on in the outside world.
Yes, I think your reference to a computer program is quite relevant here, because it is like we're programmed. It's like if you're working on your laptop and you do something, there's a lot of processes going on behind the scenes. And this is what our modeling the golden thread process, when we're trying to do what Alex is explaining, slow that down to see, what do you believe? Why do you believe it? Oh my goodness, this is so powerful. And you can do this for yourself. You can get a sheet of A4 paper, put a line down the center, as I suggest, put on one side of the paper a belief. I'm going to mention something that Alex says, that a lot of my clients say, I'm not good enough. Right. Then the why. Why do you believe you're not good enough? And that goes down to what we call the three lies. I'm not good enough. I can't cope. I'm unlovable. Put that on one side and then explain why. Why is that statement true? And that process is so powerful for you to sit down and say, I'm not good enough because, and here's the golden thread process. And you'll find then you'll go down to the main causes of these beliefs, how these beliefs have been formed in your mind. And here's the aha moment. You know what? Most of these beliefs aren't even your beliefs. They're beliefs that you've inherited, adapted, taken on from someone else.
And so if we hold the belief that I'm not good enough or I can't cope, compared to, say, the next person who believes they are good enough, or, you know what, I will cope with any challenging situation. Those two people can encounter exactly the same challenge in their life, but their internal referencing with their core beliefs and how they process that challenge or that unpredictability will produce very different physiological responses. So the person who holds the core belief of I'm not good enough, or I'm not going to be able to cope, or I can't cope with life or anything, I fall apart, their physiological response will be red light feelings and emotions of anxiety. So the palpitations, the muscle tension, the headache, the churning of the stomach, all those kind of anxiety symptoms. By contrast, the person who holds the core beliefs of I am good enough, I can cope with stuff, maybe I have to kind of have a bit of wriggle room, but I do manage, their internal processing of the challenge, the external situation, will not produce the same physiological response. So their emotional response may be, I don't know, a sense
resilience,
of a resilience,
an inner strength, an inner power, a green light feeling, the meeting the challenge and succeeding, and then creating a very strong inner knowing that you are pretty awesome. And then that builds and builds and builds and gets stronger and stronger and stronger. And the example that you explained, the person who's creating the red light feeling, that also gets stronger and stronger and stronger, and it becomes what we call the carousel of despair. It's like you're being sucked down into quicksand, where the other person, and the only difference is, as you've just explained, the challenge in front of them, the difficulty, the reality of life is exactly the same, but the only difference is that their programming, their belief system is totally different. So the way they address that challenge is in a total different way.
And so, David, this programming you mentioned, and also you mentioned before about childhood, I really want to touch into, because again, this connects very much to the clients that you work with, this idea that our upbringing, our childhood environment, our parental influences, what we observe as children, can affect how we create, manage, deal with our red light emotions, our anxiety in adulthood. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yes, because I have a great advantage in dealing with my clients, and they're so kind to me, and they share with me their experiences and their childhood, and we're trying to understand where these beliefs come from, and do they believe their beliefs? Do they believe their beliefs are true? Back to what do you believe and why do you believe it? And I've kind of cut it down into 3 areas. I'm not saying these are the only areas, but I think these are the main areas that I encounter with my clients. Number 1, childhood authorities. So this could be, obviously, the main one, your parents. What your parents say to you, what you observe in your home, how you see them react. I wish I had $1 for every client that says, I'm just like my mum, I'm just like my dad. And we almost mimic or copy our parents. But here's the confusion. We're talking about, and we've done several teachings on this understanding of what we call the emotional pendulum, because you can follow those parental authority figures, parents, grandparents, siblings, teachers, or you can swing in the opposite way and you can say something like, I'll never be like them, I'll never do what they say. And you lose the authenticity, the spirituality of the center of that pendulum, which is your Wu Wei. This is who you are. And what you do, you swing from mimicking and following or going directly in the opposite direction. But there's still influence in you. So these childhood authorities, whatever they are to you, is very important in forming your belief system. Number 2, your culture, religion, and societal norms. This is very important for forming your beliefs. What culture you've been brought up into, what you respect about your culture, the religion, what the religion has taught you in a very early age, and what your society that you've been brought into and you live in. And those 3 things can deeply affect what you believe, because you're adapting your beliefs to meet these external criterias rather than owning your beliefs. As Alex said earlier, your beliefs should be yours and you should be owned. And the 3rd thing is childhood experiences. What you experience as a child and the way the child's mind analyze these experiences. So I'm going to give you a simple one, but very challenging. being bullied at school. Now, if you experienced that and you were 6, 7, 8 and didn't have anybody to support you or help you, that would deeply affect your belief system. So you would then start to adopt a belief system such as, I can't deal with confrontation. I can't deal with difficult people. I can't deal with aggression. I'm very afraid of escalation. It creates anxiety when I see somebody getting mad. So those 3 core principles may be shaping your belief system, and none of them are yours. None of them you've owned and taken accountability and responsibility for. So just to finish off, get that piece of paper. What do you believe? Why do you believe it? And are you accountable for that? Are you responsible? And then finally, please, please, please apply the shent test. And for those of you who are new listeners, the shent test is very simple. Would I teach this to my physical child? When you find a belief, why you believe it, would you teach it to your physical child of 6 years old? So if a physical child came back from school and said, Mummy, I'm being bullied, Daddy, I'm being bullied, would you say, avoid them? Don't get close to them, run away. You can't deal with that. That's too powerful for you. Just make yourself small, make yourself weak. Try and keep out of the way. Just give them your dinner money, give them your food. You would never say that to them. In that difficult circumstances, you would address it, as Alex explained, and deal with it. And that shent test is one of the most simplest but powerful lessons. And when you find a belief, just ask yourself, would I teach this to my child?
And for our new listeners, David, the Shen in the Wu Wei Wisdom model is the Taoist term for our kind of inner wise self, our authentic self, our spiritual self that can be separate, say, from the ego mind, the inner child mind. And it's that kind of spiritual wise essence of who we are.
But even more than that, Alex, it stands for your innate value and worth, who you are. And that's why that shent test is so powerful, because you can value your physical child and their worth and value. Mm-hmm. But sometimes if we have these beliefs that have eroded our own worth and value, it's very difficult to value ourselves.
And David, so I can see how, for example, if we were brought up in a household with, say, a very anxious mother who believed that danger was around every corner, not only as a child would we observe her tension and her red light feelings of anxiety at the slightest thing, which we would then mimic, and then we would assume, of course, that our mother was right. The world is a dangerous place. We have to be careful. We have to be on guard, ready for everything. I can see how we can adopt that sort of belief as a child, which then we bring through into adulthood. But say we are brought up in a family group, a community group, a society group, where one of the driving beliefs is the world's against us, we need to protect ourselves, we're discriminated against. And that then becomes our core belief by observation and through teachings in our childhood and as we grow up. I would say a lot of people holding those sorts of beliefs, when they do the Shen test and say, would I teach this same belief to my child? A lot of people would say, yes, I would, even though they know that actually it creates a physiological response of tension and anxiety within them because they still believe that's the truth.
So I think that's where I disagree with you, Alex, because I think that when you're doing the Shen test and you know absolutely that this is not going to help your child, say that they're a victim and the world's against them, even though you believe it, it would be extremely difficult for you to give the child the right teaching. But in my experience, what normally happens then is you avoid the situation completely. But you wouldn't tell your child, yes, it's okay, you are a victim. You know, the culture says that people are going to be against you. You would want to encourage your child, and you would want to give the teachings to your child that we're giving to you now. There is something deeper about you, that you can be resilient. Your roots are grounded in your spirituality of being a unique and spiritual human being, and you can absolutely overcome any obstacle if you connect to that shent spirituality. I think this is the difficulty. This is why I never blame parents, because I think if you believe something, even though you know it's not helpful, the example that you given, if your mother is a worrier and worries about as everything, it's very difficult for your mother, even though she knows it's not helpful for her and it won't be helpful to you, it's very difficult for her to give you a different teaching, even though she's not right.
And so why is that?
Well, because for her, she doesn't know a different way out.
Yeah.
She's in what you called earlier, this familiarity. Because if she knew a different way out, and this would be the unknown, and so she can't teach you what she doesn't know herself.
Yeah.
But she will then try and avoid the situation, or just say, okay, sweetheart, we'll just go to bed, or just have a cookie, or just have a glass of milk, or come, let me give you a hug or something. She won't address and give you the knowledge on how to deal with the situation. But I believe strongly that inside of all of us, we have this inner wisdom, this inner knowledge that I call shent, that you have to go past the emotions, connect to that inner resourcefulness that we all have. And that's that feeling, if you're talking about feelings, that is the green light feelings of inner knowing, of trusting yourself, of knowing that you are a coping machine. Because look back at your life, every situation, no matter how difficult you perceived it to be at the time, you have got through it. You will get through it. This is our innate nature. This is who we are. We are spiritual beings. And once we understand that, first of all, we can learn and teach that to ourselves, and then we can pass it on to our children. So when they encounter these challenging situations in reality, they have you as their resource that they can go to, and you and them can work it out together.
And I think, David, this is the overarching message we want to give to people, that just because your parents struggled with the red light feelings of anxiety, or that there were strong beliefs passed down through your parents or your peers or people who were influential to you, does not mean that you have to be that way. And that when you experience the red light emotions of anxiety, you have the choice. You do not have to avoid the emotions by ignoring them, running away from them, doing other kind of strategies, like you say, hide yourself away, play small, all that sort of stuff. You can confront the emotions and question them. And when you start to question them, then it reveals these beliefs that we carried from our childhood, which have been buried within our subconscious mind, but which are guiding our life.
Well, you're right, and you see how this lesson has gone a full circle, and we're coming back now to self-responsibility, accountability, and it goes back to where we opened. What do you believe? Why do you believe it? Not why does your father or your mother or your culture or your religion believe it, but why do you believe it? And that goes down, which I'm sure we'll touch on the other videos in this subject, doing the golden thread process, getting to these core beliefs, really challenging yourself of why you believe it. Because is it enough to say, I believe it because my mother believed it. I believed it because my father believed it. I believed it because the religion has told me it's true. And I believe strongly that you should question and be accountable for what you believe. And that really will change the red light feeling, whatever you want to call it, anxiety, stress, tension, overwhelm, whatever you want to call it, into a green light feeling. Because when you're turning to a green light feeling, that's when you connect to your shent. That's when you connect to your resilience, your inner power. You have that inner powerhouse, and that's what we want to connect you to.
And David, really the message for this whole series is about this empowerment, is understanding that you can take control of your thoughts, your beliefs, your emotional experiences and your responses to life. It's an incredibly empowering teaching. And I know with all the clients that you've worked with who struggle with anxiety, that they now understand that anxiety is not their identity. Anxiety is something that can be managed, it can be understood, and it can be eliminated.
Well, you're right, and I'm sure we'll come on to this as on the other videos. But how many times have you heard somebody say and identify themselves, I am an anxious person? And right away, that makes you the victim of an anxiety that you are creating. And there's the carousel of despair. You're now creating anxiety and then becoming a victim of the anxiety and then identifying yourself as that victim.
Great. Thank you, David. And I will put links in the show notes to other teachings and meditations that will help you on this topic. So next week, we're going to be looking at anxiety and fear of the future and how your inner child is involved. And after that, we are then looking at anxiety and ruminating on the past and past traumatic memories and experiences. And also then another teaching we're going to be doing is on anxiety and the self, thinking you're not good enough, that you're not perfect, and how that creates those red light feelings. So do tune in for all those teachings. If you have enjoyed this teaching, please do let us know and perhaps share it with someone else who you think may also benefit from it. David works every week with clients all over the world on exactly the sort of issues we've talked about today. If you'd like to learn more about David's one-to-one consultations, I will also put a link in the show notes to those as well. And finally, please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We produce new long-form teachings every Saturday, as well as 2 midweek short snippets of wisdom for you to enjoy. So do subscribe. We look forward to seeing you again very soon. Bye-bye.